Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you were enjoying our little setup chats in the background. I am so excited to introduce our next presenter, Leslie Hendricks from the University of South Carolina. And Leslie, I'll let you give a little bit more background on you. But Leslie is a new co-author on a business analytics book that is in the works. And so I think she's going to talk a little bit about that. But she has got some really great experience in teaching R at all different levels. And she's going to talk to us today about the ways that she incorporates that into business statistics and business analytics. So Leslie, thanks again, and I will turn things over to you.
Thanks, Noelle. So I'm Leslie Hendricks. That was a great introduction. I'm so glad that you all could be here today to join in. I don't know exactly what you guys want to hear about in terms of R, so I am aiming this talk to someone who has never taught R and is thinking about it, or maybe you'll get a little bit of tidbits that you can implement in your classroom if you're already using R in your classroom. So, and I would love to hear any tips that you have too. And the last thing I want to say before I get started is if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat because that will inform me what to talk about. So I don't mind questions at all. So just reach out if you have one. All right, so let me share my screen and then I'll get my okay, awesome. Okay. I don't use WebEx very much, so bear with me if I can't find things. All right, so teaching R to business students. So why did we choose to teach R and the how? So a little bit of background about me. I came to the Darla Moore School of Business in 2017 in the fall, and I have my PhD is in straight statistics. So I don't have a background in business, but I was brought into the Moore School as part of the analytics push because our dean, Dean Bruce, is very committed to having our undergraduate students be as proficient as possible in analytics in every way. So I was brought in as one of the first rounds of that push. So when I came in, I was brought in as the coordinator for a second course in statistics. So before that, the students in the business school, our business school only took one statistics course, and I came in on the first iteration of the rollout for the 2-course sequence. So I was hired to be the coordinator for that second course and of course also teach it. So the first course in that progression is a very basic statistics course. And currently those business students are learning the stats in Excel, which works just fine for a first business course. But our second course covers much more advanced topics like time series, logistic regression, ANOVA, multiple regression. And I am a statistician, so I did not use Excel very much at all. I could copy and paste and save a workbook, but that was about as fancy as it got for me because I would always use R to do my analyses. So I had to get a quick lesson in Excel, and I thought, okay, they want me to teach this course in Excel, no problemo, I'll just learn it. So I remember getting to multiple regression and being so frustrated because of having to have your columns, your explanatory variables adjacent to each other. So I couldn't even test out different models. And I just felt like I was working with one hand tied behind my back. It didn't do logistic regression. I was having to do a workaround for that. And so I decided to pilot in my 2 sections in the spring of 2018. I decided to pilot teaching R. I did that over in my previous job, so I figured I could do it here too. And I knew it would be challenging, but I didn't anticipate how challenging it would be because the business students were, largely had zero coding when they come into our business school. So once we got over the hurdle of learning basic coding, they had a much more solid grasp, I realized, of the statistical concepts that I was teaching, because once you can learn how to just quickly dial up a t-test or a regression model in R, and you're not wasting time trying to get some workaround in a program that really isn't working for your needs, the students really could focus on the statistical concepts. And in addition, according to the student evaluations, they liked learning R versus disliked it 5-to-1 at a 5-to-1 ratio. So the department chair looked at my evaluations. He's a very good department chair, and he really keeps track of what's going on in the classes in our department. And so he read all of my evaluations, and there were quite a few of them because I teach large classes. And he talked to the dean about it, and the dean said, okay, let's make it mandatory for all sections of our second course in statistics. So I knew right then that my new colleagues were either going to love me or they were going to hate me. But I think we've made it through okay with that. I know there was some panic when he also talked about the rest of the faculty in other classes trying to weave in R in all their projects too. So we're still working on threading it through the whole curriculum. So a couple quotes about the student perception, the ones who liked it. Of course, the negative ones were students who just didn't realize what a great skill it was or how it could fit into their major. So I'm very deliberate when I start teaching R now about talking about how it's used in marketing and how it's used in finance and that sort of thing. So student perception. This is a quote from an evaluation. I wish I could have learned more about R. When I took this class, I was one of the lucky students to learn how to code in R. I feel we didn't have much time to develop this amazing skill in class. So we had lots of students who wanted more. It helped at the career fair to differentiate me from other people. Also, I would love to take more data science courses, and I hope they're offered. And this one is important because we'll talk about it later, but you know, I feel like whenever you learn any coding language, that it's not as hard. Our students won't be as afraid to learn any other kind of coding language. And so that's why, to me, I don't get into any kind of battle about whether it should be R or Python, because I feel like once you learn one, you should be able to learn the other one. So this student recognized that and said, even though sometimes I'm not using R directly, the coding language is a good way to understand other coding like SQL, for example. And then we have this really cool project at our university where some of our my colleagues in the business department work with students, and they formed a team to help our baseball team analyze their stats. So this student was using R. They're all using R to help our baseball team. And this student said, we're currently working on analyze what makes specific pitches effective, spin rate, vertical break, etc., developing a more in-depth post-game box score with more insightful analytics, visualizing data to better explain data, and also preparing scouting reports for them. So just a few of my students' feedback on that. So I was really encouraged by that. All right, so why did we choose R or Python versus like SPSS or some other off-the-shelf statistical program that can handle these higher methods a little bit better than Excel? Because they're very in demand, quite frankly, and it's free. So I just did a little search in Indeed for jobs on R and Python, and it came up with 14,659 right off the bat. I then filtered on $70,000 salary and up, and it came up with over 12,000 results. And then I changed the experience level to entry level. I thought, let's push it and see if there are entry level jobs using R or Python in the 70,000 plus range, and 1,782 jobs right away. And that was a 30-second Google search. So, you know, I think it's a no-brainer for me anyway, to use a free program that they can always use for the rest of their life, and that will give them skills to use any other program that they use for the rest of their life. And so Matt Taddy's talking today at 2 o'clock. So I encourage you to listen to his talk. He's a really cool guy, and he knows a lot of stuff. Anyway, so he's the Vice President for Economic Technology and Chief Economist for the Consumer Division for North America at Amazon. And I asked him about R or Python, and he gave me some quotes. Business analysts at all levels at Amazon will be much more insightful and productive if they learn how to pull, manipulate, and analyze data using scripting languages. So I actually cut some of that out. He says that they learn very quickly that they're going to be more efficient if they get up to speed on the scripting languages. And anyone working with data will need to continue learning and updating their computational and methodological skills. So that was the tail end of another quote where he was talking about, you know, once you learn one of these programs, you can code in any other one. It's much easier to learn the other programs. And in fact, if you get a job in data science, you're probably going to need to pull from several different programs. All right, so how do I teach R to business students? So I know I've been to enough conferences now and been in enough discussions, formal discussions and side discussions on whether to teach, to use, what software to use in a statistics program, to know that there are, some faculty who have been using Excel for 30 years, or they think that you should really use, JUMP or SAS or something else. And so I knew that taught me that my students probably wouldn't have already had someone say, hey, you should be learning R for your statistics course, because there are a lot of my colleagues who've just been using other programs for their whole entire career. So I quickly realized that I was the first one to bring R to our business school. So I figured that I had to get buy-in from the students and teach them that at the same time, because I have to have a good attitude. They have to have a good attitude, or they're not going to be able to do it. So what I do is I start right up front on the very first day. So the first day we go over the syllabus. It's the first lecture. So the very first day we go over the syllabus and everything. And I have them bring their laptops, because at the end of that syllabus, policies, getting enrolled in Canvas, talk, I use a Free for Teachers Canvas account. So I have to give them instructions on that. I show them our downloading R page, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. And we try to end class a little bit early that day so I can circulate around while they all try to download R. Now, if you have a really large lecture, one pro tip I can give you is don't have them all download it in class at the same time if you have a large lecture, because you're going to tap those, crayon mirrors, you're going to tap those repositories, and the students will have a very slow download. I learned that lesson the hard way. So we kind of try to stagger it in my class. If I have a smaller class, I end class early and walk around, or I just give them that as an assignment if it's a large class to do before the next lecture. And I tell them that it's imperative that they do it before they come in, so we can make sure that we diagnose any problems with downloading R right away. Another way that I get them kind of sucked in right away from the first day of class and get them started at R is I offer a 1 exam bonus point. So each of my exam questions is worth like 3 or 4 points. And so I give these little like nugget bonus points, and students love them. Students love getting bonus points. I give them a bonus point to come by my office before the next class and get help, show me that they've downloaded R, or they can download it in front of me so that I can help them. And I feel like getting them over that first hurdle makes them feel like, okay, I can do this. I have enough support that I can do this thing. All right, so we incorporate R into all of the lecture slides and videos, and I demonstrate R in almost every class, and I always include the R code in the slides, in my slides that I present at the front of the class, and the student version of the notes, so that they can follow along. And in case they don't have their computer that day, or if they just don't have a computer to bring to class, they can always have that code instead of dialing it up on their R screen. They'll always have access to that code that we used and the output. And of course, I encourage students to bring a laptop to every class. I think they all have nicer laptops than me. One last thing I'll point out about this picture before we go over and do a little live R demo is, notice I meant to circle this before I started, but oh well, I think you can see there's a Podium computer in my picture, and there's also a Windows laptop in my picture, and there's also a Mac laptop in my picture. So I'm lucky enough for that my department bought me a Mac, so I can help the Mac users, and I can also help the Windows users. And I can always test out my code on both systems before I go to class. So that way I'm always prepared to give them tips, like if you use the file.choose to read in your CSV file on a Mac, you might get a warning message. And so I can always predict what happens. If you don't have that luxury, if you either have just a Mac or just a Windows machine, I find that your students will be glad to help you. They'll be glad to turn their computer around and show you how it looks different, and then you can just incorporate that into your notes. They'll even send you screenshots. They'll give you whatever you want, I find, anyway. All right. So we'll talk about our cases and projects in a little bit, and that I encourage Googling. Don't just follow my recipe for getting an answer. I want you to find a new function. If you find one that you like better, then fantastic. All right, so let's go over and I'll show you how we start teaching R. All right. So this is the help page that I created. I actually created this in R using a script file with a little bit of markdown language. And I should say I use base R. I don't use RStudio. And the reason for that is RStudio is proprietary and they have a free version right now, but it's not guaranteed that they're going to have one forever. So I feel, like it's better to teach base R for me. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong if you use RStudio in your class, but I know that everything I teach my students, if they want to use RStudio later, it will all translate over, but maybe not vice versa. Okay, so I use base R, and that's why. So I created these help pages, and we're gonna have a formal website created soon, but right now we just post them kind of in an offline website. So I've just pulled up some of them. So this is what I tell them to do for their homework that very first night to download R. I have step-by-step instructions on how to download R. And I found that less screenshots are better on this, to just give them some simple little steps that they can follow to download R. And I have it for a Windows, and then I have separate instructions for a Mac. So I try to make this part very clear, very easy for them so they don't already get put off by, like, what is a crayon mirror? I have no idea what a crayon mirror is. So I answer that question a ton. So, and then I have screenshots of what it should look like after they've downloaded it. And this works really well for us. Just a simple, not a big, long document with tons of pictures. This works very, very well for us. And then again, am in my office for many, many hours. I make myself very available before that second class so that anyone who needs help can come and find me and get help. We have a data lab, which I'll talk about in a minute, but they are not online until the second week of class. So I'm kind of on my own to help 450 students download R. All right. So the next class, when they come in, we start going over the other help pages. And I tell them, there's always a couple in a class that large. There are always a couple who haven't downloaded it before the second class. And so they can I tell them to follow along. I have a print copy of this in their lecture notes, which I'll show you. So I present PowerPoint slides, but I create a student version of the notes so that they have everything in their notes and they can take notes on this. They can write little tips that I give out when they have their R downloaded and just run the code then to learn it. So I always put a copy of it in here. It's posted on our little website, and it's being displayed in front of the class as well. All right. I'll go ahead and show this now while I have it pulled up. Once we get past the learning R, I cover all that in the second and third class. We just go through it very slowly together. And then I talk about practice, practice, practice. I tell them it's kind of like seeing do an integral for you in a class in calculus, and then you go home and try it and you just have to practice it. It always looks easier when someone else is doing it for you. So their lecture notes are basically like a little textbook. So these are about like 140 pages right now, and I'm beefing them up every semester. And they just fill in the blanks as I'm going along. And it's important for me that they also pick up, I print their lecture notes for them at the beginning of the semester, and they get the bonus point for showing me that they're downloading R, and if they pick up their lecture notes packet, because later when we're running a lot of computer code, they are not going to be able to, write down all this ANOVA output. There's no way that they can copy all that down in just a notebook. So I want them to have these lecture notes so that they can, draw little arrows and remind themselves what they're supposed to be, if they think they're going to forget the inputs to the ANOVA function in R, they can make a little note about it. So that's been very, very helpful for the students to have. All right. So the very first thing that we do is we just start with the basics. We use R like a calculator. We just literally, I show them how to use these help pages. We walk through, we type this into R. Let me go ahead and I'll show you how I do it in class. See if I can snap this over. There we go. And R. Perfect. Okay, so I'll have it pulled up like this in class. And I have a much bigger screen, so that's a nice luxury because I can show my script file a little bit better too. And we literally just go over into the R console and we work through everything that I have in these help pages, and I explain as we go. I know students can read this on their own, but I find that it's much, much better to walk through these help pages in the first, just take a lecture and get it out of the way so that they can just come back here and use this as a resource later. They'll be jotting little notes down about things I say. You're going to want to put an asterisk by this because you're going to forget how to do this. And so I just talk through it and we work through it together. And so this is just the basics, using it like a calculator. We talk about how to create objects. We talk about the built-in functions and how to pull up the help file for the built-in functions. And then I just list a table of common functions here that they're going to use so they can refer back to it throughout the semester. Of course, go introduce the logical vectors and how those work, because those are at the heart of pretty much everything R does. And then I always end with some tips. And here's a tip for you. If you're going to copy any of this method that I use, you might want to call that notes, because they see tips and my students don't read it. They ignore it. They think it's just extra extraneous stuff, and they're actually really important things. And so we work through the next one, which is reading and data. And I want to point out one little function in case you didn't know about it when you teach R. It's always a little tricky when they're hit in the face with this program that only has a cursor. So I always tell them my main goal for you with R this semester is to get you to not be afraid of only having a cursor. Don't be afraid of learning to code. That's my main goal. You don't have to memorize a bunch of stuff. I don't memorize everything. I know it because I use it a lot. So I Google all the time and pull up the help file. So one strategy to get around having to teach them about their working directory, and that's a little tricky when you have, we have like a little over half Mac users and a really good proportion of Windows users too. And actually we have a couple Chromebooks. So I want to mention that too. You can actually install a Linux partition on the Chromebooks, and the students can use those that way to do R. Anyway, so I teach the file.choose operator in the read.csv function. In case you didn't know what that was, it literally, if I ran this, it would pull up a pop-up window, and you can just navigate anywhere on your computer and double click the file. So the first day I tell them, later we'll work on the working directory, but the first day I just teach them the file.choose operator in there, and they can call a data set in that way. They're always puzzled when you call a data set in and it doesn't do anything. Like I called in the diamonds data from ggplot2 right here in my R console, and I call it sparkly. And they're always like, well, it didn't do anything because there's nothing showing on the screen. And so my pages specifically talk about that you have to look at your data. It's different than looking at it in Excel. It's not nearly as tangible like Excel is, so you have to just dial it up to make it tangible. So I teach the structure function, the head function, and the summary function. And I even teach the view function with a capital V. It works much better on a Windows than a Mac, but I still teach it because some of them really like having something that looks like Excel when they're starting off.
Leslie,
and then,
can I stop you for 1 second? So
yeah.
One of the questions, I know you're a huge fan of R, obviously, but one of the questions that was in the chat was about how, and it sounds like it's more about the benefits of, but the question was, how do I present the request to teach R in the business department? So I guess, how do you approach how do you get them to want to use R, or how do you get the department to say, yeah, we'll do this? And and obviously the benefits, you see the benefits of using R, so maybe you can address that.
So you definitely have to have buy-in from your department chair and or dean, and I was lucky enough to have that. So I would probably recommend starting there, and be armed with information when you go to them. Show them what a critical game-changing skill this is for many of your students, and get them on board. I think if you don't have them on board, you're going to have a very difficult time getting your students on board with it. So is that good?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just quick show this last little help page that I was going to bring up. And here, I just wanted to emphasize that when we work through these a little bit more advanced features, like the basics of subsetting, I call it, this is where I really start showing the students what, when I explain this line of code. So let me go ahead and run this. I have my little script file pulled up. So when I'm showing this code, here it is. Okay. There we go. So where we use the square brackets for subsetting, I always relate, this is where I start relating this command to what you would do in Excel. So I always say, if you wanted to find the average carat for a diamond, but you only want to look at it for premium diamonds, what would you do in Excel? And they would all say a filter. And so I say exactly. So those square brackets are like filtering in Excel. So anyway, I start relating it to Excel, and that also helps in the classroom. All right, so that is what I have for the R demo. And let's go back here and see what else we can talk about.
Leslie, can I interject with one quick question? Someone just had a question. Any technical challenges that you run into or that you have in the past installing R that you'd want to kind of warn people about? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Of course. There are always some anomalies. So I'll talk about this in just a few seconds, but we actually learned really quickly that it was helpful to not only recruit our own business students to work in our data lab, we also now have 2 students from computer science. And so they help us get unstuck. I'm pretty good at sorting out problems, but it's really helpful if you can enlist some help from your computer science colleagues if those come up. When we run into problems that are common, I just update that in my tips on the Downloading R page. Yeah. By and large, most students don't have a problem. They all get really confused about the crayon mirror, so good luck explaining that. All right, so the issues that we found were obviously students need support outside of class. They're going to struggle with transitioning from the menu-driven Excel to the coding interface of R, and the proper level and amount of support yields a much better student experience and for your sanity. So we needed a strategy for large class sizes. I teach anywhere from 120 on up to this semester I have 450 students in an online class because of COVID. I teach only 25 honor students face-to-face and the rest are all online. So we also needed a strategy for those fully online students. So we came up with the data lab as our solution. So we recruited students in fall of 2018, but we didn't have dedicated space at that time. And this is actually a funny, actual true picture of our data lab that first semester. We got kicked out of a room that we reserved for our help session that day. So we really realized that we needed to really push to get some space. So in the spring of 2019, we actually had dedicated staff. And then in the fall of 2019, we got a beautiful space dedicated for our data lab. We have a wonderful dean who really is behind this analytics push. So I feel very, very lucky to be part of founding the data lab at the Darla Moore School of Business. And then we recruited those computer science students to help us get unstuck when we got stuck. So our space is here. The students can come in. There are no seats. We want them coming in here just to get help with the code that they've already coded. We don't want them hanging out all day and just asking for us to feed them the code. This is our satellite space where we send them when they don't have any code. We refer them to our help page, the pertinent place in their notes, and we ask them to come back when they've at least typed something into their R screen. This is last year's picture of our data lab staff. I don't have a current one because of COVID-19, but I just absolutely love working in there, and our staff, our MBA and undergraduate students really enjoy working with the students as well. And so what we're doing now to teach R is our first case study uses Excel. So we remind them how to use Excel. And I say that, I kind of want to chuckle when I say that because I feel like all of our students forget how to do like even a pivot table in Excel from the time they get done their Excel course till they come to us. So I have now started teaching a little bit of Excel also when I help the students. I'll either teach them pivot tables again and or filters with the subtotal function so that it'll actually add everything up for them. So we use Excel, and I do that to remind them of Excel and emphasize its importance in the business world. It's obviously very important and used everywhere. But I also use that because in the second case study, it's a different data set, but it's basically the same type of questions that they do in their first case study in Excel. So that way they can relate the Excel functionality to the commands they need to use in R, and they can also check their answers in Excel. This is like a free 100 as long as you are trying to learn to use R. Now, how do I verify that they use R? Because I did trust them the first semester that they used R, and quickly found out most of them were just using Excel to get the answers. I now have a like an essay question at the bottom of our case study quiz, and I have them copy and paste their R code in. And we actually got really fancy with how we required them to put their R code in. I have a script file and a little video of instructions that I gave my students, if anyone wants that after, to format the code so that it makes it easy for us to check. I'd be happy to share that with you if you want to reach out after this talk. I'd be happy to send both of those. So we make the data set small enough that they can literally check their answers in Excel, but we try to find one that's big enough that it makes it cumbersome. So to show them, like, one of the first reasons that you need R is for bigger data sets, which are everywhere. The projects and remaining case studies, we have 4 case studies and 3 projects. And the remaining cases and projects all use R, and we require it. If they don't give us functioning R code, they get a 0 on their assignment. And again, we try to get data sets that are too large to use Excel. We make those even bigger towards the end because we really want them to understand the power of R. Okay. All right, so let me show you that script. Well, you can just ask for the script file for the case study if you'd like. So that is what I had to present. Do we have any other questions?
Thank you in advance, Leslie, for offering to share your script file, because I think that might answer a few questions that came up. But Harper, please, I know you've got a couple that you've been monitoring in the chat.
Well, I'll go ahead and pull it up right now while we have a few seconds.
I feel like there's so many. Wait.
Oh, there are lots of
I'm like, I don't know what
That's a good thing.
Well, and I do have one thing pulled up. Let me
where do you find your data set? That's an easy one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I've become a pro now at finding data sets because, as Noelle mentioned, I'm working on a kind of a data science book with Matt Taddy, and it's like machine learning and artificial intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So I've gotten kind of good at finding data sets. There are, and again, if we correspond afterwards, I can try to make a little list of my favorite websites, but like the Yelp data set that's free on the internet is great. The New York City taxi data is free on the internet. I heavily use the data that comes in R packages. There's a command that you can actually dial up. What is it? Package. Let's see, data set. Is it data set? Package. Let me see if this works. Equals, watch me not be able to remember this. ggplot2, it's something like this. You can Google what.
Then you just Google it, right? Yeah, I was just going to say,
exactly.
Then you can Google it. It doesn't work.
Yeah. So maybe it's data. Let's see. I like to win. I don't like to lose. So let me see if this works. Oh, see? And you can dial up all the data sets that are available in any R package. So not every R package has data sets, but most of them do, because in the help file, they'll often work out a little bit of the code with their package. So I heavily, heavily use the data sets that I can find in R packages. They're free and available, and yeah. So I hope that helps to answer that question.
Another question sort of relates back to the other question that I asked you, but it's, what are some really key points to present to the chairperson on why business students need knowledge of R?
So if you have a job fair, a career fair for your students, we do, I'm sure other business schools do that same thing. I would link up with some of those businesses and start asking, just, put it in writing, get it in an email, and start asking, how do you guys use R, Python, or other languages in your business? And ask, how valuable of a skill that is at that business. I would start reaching out. We actually have a board at our Center for Applied Business Analytics. We've put together a board for our center, and those would be a great resource if you have a center for business analytics. I would see if you have a board. and reach out to those businesses because they're obviously very interested in analytics if they're part of that board. Yeah.
Okay, another question.
Oh.
Until your book comes out, what textbook websites do you recommend for teaching R to business students who have no R background?
Okay, so we use Jagia and Kelly. Did I pronounce that name right? I still haven't asked that.
You did, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Alison Kelly's on. She'll tell you if you did it wrong.
Okay. Yeah, so we use that one. And it has a lot of R coding. It's for R. So it's the 3rd edition, I believe, but it's their newest edition and it uses R. And do you guys have any others in the portfolio that use R? Noelle?
Aside from the Jagia Kelly, Alert Watra Chen, the business analytics text, so it's the same kind of author family and it has even more R coverage. So much more dedicated to the business. And we'll hear more about that later.
Coming in our news, some other stats books, right, Noelle?
Exactly. So upcoming revisions of some of our business stats texts will have additional coverage of R. But for now, specifically for business statistics and analytics, Jagia Kelly, those are the titles that have it.
Yep. Yeah. So, and they have learning R questions so they have questions in the homework question bank, whatever it's called, that are done out with the hints and videos and solutions if you do it in Excel. And then they also have solutions in there for many of the homework questions. They've developed solutions for in R for some of them. So if you use that book, you could use both or either or. Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, I just saw a question that came in and it's kind of related, Leslie, to what you were talking about, going to employers or if you have a panel of, local employers that you can that are connected with your analytics programs or departments. Someone asked if you find that employers want SAS or other skills instead of R, or are you primarily hearing R, Python, those kind of things?
Primarily hearing R and Python. Of course, SAS is embedded like into the banking industry and some other industries. But again, if they know how to code in R and Python, what I'm hearing from the business, the CABA members and stuff that I'm talking with, they are happy to have someone who's just not afraid to code. So if you know R, they feel like you can pick up SAS and vice versa. Yeah, that's what at least my experience. So.
Excellent. Harper, what other questions are on your list? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm done. I don't know that I have any
others.
Hang
on, I just got one that came in. One question, then I'm going to jump ahead of you. One question that just came in, do you grade our projects by hand or do you have an auto grader that you use, Leslie?
Oh my goodness, I wish I had an auto grader for everything. So yeah, the case studies, the 4 case studies are a quiz in Canvas, so it's auto graded except for that last question with the code. So all I have to do is go into the Speed Grader app. There's a button at the top of the Canvas screen to jump to question 10. I copy and paste the code into my R console, make sure it runs, make sure that their code line actually matches the version of the question that they have. And so that one goes fairly quickly. And then the projects are group projects because it's, I have 450 students. So they have to be hand graded because they're like, the first one's a data visualization project. And my other ones are about other statistical methods. So they have to actually carry out some analysis or something. And there's no way to automate. There's no way to automate that. And that I found. If you found one, please let me know. Yeah. So, but again, I've gotten kind of, better at creating directions on how to put their code in there so that I'm not sorting through like a big dump of their whole entire R console with all the errors and everything in it. So I've gotten a lot better at that. I'm going to see if I can pull up the script file really quick. Let's go here.
While you're trying to do that, Leslie, one of the questions that came in early on, and you may have kind of addressed it through your talk, but someone was asking, do you skip R and just go right to Python? And I feel like I know your answer to that, but any kind of justification for why?
There'll be no judging from me. I went to R because I've been using R for a very long time because I am a statistician, and R is widely used in among statisticians. Looks like it's going to be really finicky about me pulling this up. There's no judging from me. I think either one of those skills is an awesome skill to have. It depends who you ask. Like, if you ask one faculty versus another, if you ask my colleagues, one of them is going to feel very strongly that Python is the way to go. But I don't judge about which one. I think they're both, very in demand. They're definitely at the top for what is in demand right now, both of them. And once you learn one, you can learn the other. Yeah. R was created for statistics though, so it does have a lot of nice packages that'll help you teach your statistics course that are built in and tried and true. So, that would be my recommendation to start with R, but.
Thank you.
That's
Another
just me.
question that you kind of already spoke to, and sorry, Harper, did you have something? Nope.
Nope, I was just going to tell you we have 5 minutes, so I just wanted Leslie to realize that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to see, I was having.
Spectacular that you wanted to show, like in 5 minutes, do it.
Okay, I'm going to pull up the script file in case anyone still wants to see it. So I'm having a hard time talking and doing things today at the same time. Let's see.
I'll let you focus. I'll give you the word.
Let me see if I put it in here. Yes, case stew starter script. Yeah. Okay, so this is the starter script that I give them for our case 2. And in case you don't know R, those of you who know R know what these hashtags mean. Pound sign, number sign, whatever you want to call it. That is a comment in R. So it won't run that. So if I hit Control R on my Windows, it'll run that line of code, but it's not really a line of code, it's just a comment. So I have a little video where I literally show myself filling this in. So they have to put their read.csv command here. They put their read.csv command here. And then if they attached it, because I do teach the attach function, I know it can be really finicky, but I tell them how to, when it's good to use it and when it's not. So if they attach it, they have to put that code there, and then their code to answer question 1 goes here. The code for question 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9, those are our questions on our case that actually have to have our code to get the answer.
Leslie, one quick question in regard to this. How do you prevent students from copying code or programs from one another?
It's funny you should bring that up because you're going to have that. So we are working right now. We had a very large number of students who shared code with each other or just directly blindly copied this time. I don't know what the deal was this semester. I don't know if it's because they feel more at a distance because everybody's at home online. They feel less, like if you're not right there, it makes it easier for them if they have a nagging feeling of guilt for doing it. I think that feeling of guilt goes away a little bit more in a distance class. So we had a very large number this semester, and it took 40 hours out of my life so far. I spent 6 hours Friday night gathering more evidence as we go back and forth with the Office of Academic Integrity. So I want to prevent that again. So we're actually working right now on a tutorial that all of our students in the spring will have to take to unlock the rest of the course. And it is a tutorial specifically on academic integrity with computer code. So our computer science department at Carolina came up with one, and I'm going to make ours model very similar to that one. So I think it's very important to address exactly and specifically what is and is not allowed in terms of sharing code and what resources they can use to get help. You definitely should think about academic integrity if you're teaching R, any coding. Because the students are scared, so you have to remember that. This looks very intimidating to a lot of our students. So you want to make sure that you give them the proper support and guidance, but some of them unfortunately will make a bad decision if you don't make it blatantly clear that that's not allowed. Did I answer that question?
You did, thank you.
Okay.
And I think we've got 1 minute left, unfortunately.
Okay.
Right, we're just about at time. I think we covered all of the questions. So thank you, everybody. Anything that we didn't get to, we'll do a follow-up document where we're going to bug Leslie for some more answers and some of the things that she said that she would share. So we will follow up with all of that afterwards. But we're going to break now for 15 minutes. Leslie, thank you so much. This was very, very informative. This was a great session.
Thank you.